What about Leon Panetta's statement here, that we didn't have enough information to know what's going on? You don't launch aerial strike or boots on the ground into a situation where you do not know what's going on. Is that not a valid reason for an action?
I think it flies in the face of what we already know. You have a drone strike that's giving you real-time information on everything that's happening on the ground. Those things have a pretty high resolution, by the way. They can see what's happening. They know. They also have U.S. personnel on the ground who are relaying in real time what's happening. They can discuss the need. As Amy's saying, some of them were even discussing specific target sets that they could have been trying to put ordnance on. So there's no reason why this could not have happened. I mean, this could have been done. Someone made a decision, and I have to ask this. Was the decision that they just didn't want to get involved in a firefight on Libyan territory right now? Was there a political optic here? Was that what was going on? Because otherwise, you have a bunch of Americans crying out for help over the course of 7 hours, and no one does anything.
If it was a political decision, though, and the political choice was, well, we can send in troops and potentially have a problem, or we might have U.S. personnel die, it seems that the political decision would have been obvious in that scenario. What you're describing sounds more like this is a failed security operation. This is a failure by the Defense Department. It's a failure to connect intelligence where feeds were coming in, and not necessarily like a decision in the White House to sit back and say, our guys will be perfectly fine and let's not sort of like mess with the Libyans right now.
It could have been a decision that it was just too hot on the ground. They didn't want to land into a hot LZ. They didn't want to try to take back the consulate. As we know, the consulate was left unguarded for weeks afterwards. They decided not to land troops there. Keep in mind, we own the sky over Libya. There's no Air Force that's going to give us a problem. This isn't like sneaking into some foreign country. We didn't have to ask permission. We could have just gone and done whatever we had decided to do on the ground there. It may have required, though, a large firefight. You may have had lots of dead Libyan militia members, and by the way, they would have, I'm sure, claimed that they were not militia members the next day on Al Jazeera and all around the world. I think that that was factoring into people's minds here at the very top. Not our guys on the ground who have their M4s at their chest and saying, send me in there, I want to go get our guys.
Right, and I've read, too, that on the ground when they were watching and listening to what was going on, that there were foreign accents that were being heard in this group. So I guess my question is, maybe I speak for the table, I don't know, but it's so dreadful, the idea of our government sitting on the sidelines, watching a fight unfold, watching our ambassador and 3 other Americans under fire and being murdered and doing nothing, sitting on their hands, and then claiming, we just didn't have enough information. That is such a dreadful idea that perhaps there is some explanation that makes sense. Is it the Libyan government maybe requested that we not get involved? I mean, could there have been some diplomatic back and forth that was keeping us from taking action?
I've tried to stay away from any sort of conspiracy theory on this or suggesting really insidious motives to the administration. But I do want to play a clip from, again, the father of Tyrone Woods about what Hillary Clinton said to him when he was supposed to be meeting her to help him through his grief.
She made this statement to me that first of all, she was sorry, but then she said, we will make sure that the person who made that film is arrested and prosecuted. And when she said that, you know, I could tell that she was not telling me the truth.
Michelle, she's meeting with, as Secretary of State, a man who just lost his son, a former Navy SEAL, who rushed into battle against orders to save fellow Americans. And she's trying to console him by saying they're going to arrest the filmmaker? What does this mean to you?
You know, I don't even understand why they continue to go back to this film. It's funny because they said that they didn't deploy anyone because they didn't have hard information. They didn't have hard evidence. There was the Twitter update, the Facebook update, where Islamic militant groups took credit and responsibility for this. How is that not hard evidence, but then a YouTube video made by an obscure individual who had no social media following whatsoever is hard evidence? And then to continue to try to say that this is the reason why all of this stuff happened is just absolutely absurd.
And it's emotionally inappropriate to tell the father of a slain man, we're going to go after the YouTube. I mean, this is a man who is trying to put together the fact that his son is dead. His son was in a firefight, clearly with militia, clearly with, evildoers attacking our consulate. And our Secretary of State consoles him by making that remark. It's just completely inappropriate at all levels.
It wasn't just that, Anthony. They also, Vice President Biden asked, I'm not even going to repeat what he said. We can go on the Blaze and see it. But it was said that Barack Obama, with the president shaking this man's hand, it was like shaking a dead fish. He said he didn't care.
See, what I think this demonstrates is a lot of disconnect in the government. You know, so the failures here is not a conspiracy, but it's a failure of governing, not being able to make the decisions, not having the right people in place in the military.
Shouldn't they be held to account for it?
Oh, they should absolutely be held to account for it. But let's hold them to
the cover story that she then tells the father of a dead Navy SEAL.
Let's hold them to the account for being a failure of government.
Michelle,
Let's not push a conspiracy.
We know there are drone feeds, Michelle. We know there are drone feeds. We know that there are U.S. personnel on the ground who are relaying in real time what's happening there. How does Ambassador Rice go on the TV 5 days later and say this was a protest, that it was spontaneous? How does that happen?
This isn't a failure of government. This is a cover-up.
But if it was a cover-up, then they would all be covering it up in the same way. So it's either a failure of government or...
Which is the YouTube video, though. It's a YouTube video. She went on 5 different shows the next day talking about this YouTube video, which apparently is hard evidence. Whereas when we have people saying on Twitter, taking responsibility for that, that's not hard evidence. That makes absolutely no sense.
A lot of people in the government have come away from that. Clearly not Hillary Clinton. So clearly, you know, there's still a lot of these disconnects. So there's still a lot of disconnects.
By the way, we only know what we know through now unofficial sources. That should be pointed out. The Barack Obama's administration has not come out and said, you know what the truth is? They requested assistance multiple times, and we said no. We know this because people who work in the military, people who work in the intelligence community are outraged. By the way. And the State Department are outraged. They see this as something that absolutely needs to be told. The public needs to know this as we're going into an election and deciding if it is a failure of governance, then whoever's in charge should absolutely be held responsible. We have the opportunity to do that now.